Hi, this is Laura from Healing with Spirit, and we are back with the next episode of Triggers in Spiritual Medicine. We are recording this a lot later than anticipated. I had just returned from Cartagena, Colombia for my honeymoon, and I was hoping to do a small, short recording while I was down there. And I kind of had the nudge from the spirit world to stay centered, stay present in my relationship. And I did a lot of journaling. And I did, yeah, a lot of journaling. As I'm going to be referencing a lot of what I wrote in here, but as you can see, like half my book is full. It was a brand new book that I half filled in 2 weeks because I sat with the 12 Omen Days, starting with winter solstice, which we did an invitational only ceremony at Healing with Spirit in Hingham, Massachusetts. And the Omen Days start the day after. And the Omen Days pretty much each day represents a month for 2026. So a lot started happening before I flew out. I flew out on the 23rd, and I used a talking stick for the ceremony that was handmade by an elder who have since passed away. And carved on that stick was a spider and a web, and we shared a lot about the symbolism and what that means and why community building has never been more important than today. Because I think a lot of us have forgotten what it means to be in community. So we have a lot of unlearning and relearning. And so the first day of the Omen Days, which represents January, is the spider. And as I was cleaning up from the day before, and this was again like in between the ceremony and the day before I flew out to Colombia, I'm cleaning up my space and preparing it for folks who were using the space while I was gone. And one of the candles that was lit had a baby spider and a web it was trying to create inside the candle. And I'm going, where did that come from? Where did this come from? So today's episode is going to be all about, because usually those who've been following me for a while, I do usually a predictive tarot card, astrology, all these things for the following year. And this year I felt like weaving in, because there's so many layers happening, there's so many things weaving in and out, and I wanted to try to simplify things a little bit and not jump on the bandwagon. And the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to correct some of you who are saying that we've already started in the year of the horse. The year of the fire horse actually does not start until February. That is Imbolc in the pagan calendar, and almost every indigenous culture that is not Gregorian starts their season or starts their year right at roughly around the same time in February, because that's the seed planting. That's when everything begins. So we are still in the final stage of shedding the snake. Okay? And if you understand what snakes go through to shed that skin, it is being vulnerable. It is like it's the most vulnerable part of a snake when they are in that final stage of shedding. And so the fact that the spider kind of came in to show, it's like we are transitioning from what are we shedding to that fire, to that action. And the words I kept hearing while I was away was sovereignty and liberation. But what does that mean? And if we are oppressed and if we are experiencing mass levels of abuse and other aspects, then how do we get to liberation and sovereignty? Okay? That's what 2026 is all about. I was supposed to start the 9-month program of embodied and liberated wise woman, or originally going to be wise woman, but it's going to be embodied and liberated, because I want to invite the men who are also, and those that are non-binary, into that platform of what it means to be embodied and liberated, using pagan traditions, using the ways of the ancestors, using solid rooted traditions, as well as my 20 years of doing trauma work and weaving it all in. And Spirit kept telling me while I was away, I had it all prepped, everything is ready to go, and Spirit told me while I was away that it needs to be postponed until the fall. So we're going to do that. We're listening. Whenever I listen to the spirit world, things fall in alignment as it's meant to be. When I push things because I think what society needs or what I need, it doesn't go right. So we are postponing that program to the fall. And what we're going to be learning between here and then is how to get to that place of sovereignty and liberation. So today's podcast episode is about the 2026 web we are weaving. That means a deepening of discernment. That means liberation and sovereignty. So I'm going to use what I learned, and you might even see me referencing my notebook, just because there is so many layers, and I want to try to highlight these things in a very concise way for you, of what I've learned. And I will tell you this, the overall themes that I saw happening over the 12 days, there were several things, and things happen in threes for the most part. There were 3 key human interactions I witnessed that I'm going to share. All 3 of them were inviting things of multicultural, multi-country, ancestral, and elder grandmotherly wisdom, so lineages. And those are the types of things that we have to remember, especially as white people. The biggest challenge I'm seeing in the States right now has to do with where white folks are and where they aren't are, and how are they moving through the escape of what we're experiencing, and the unintentional harms that we are perpetuating. We have to own that aspect, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means that we have to stop, pause, and go back to other episodes where I talk about this. Breathe, what's the action step? And see where we're going. But we're in this liminal space right here, right now. And I see so much. It was like the minute I got on the plane, seriously, some of you heard these stories, like coming back to the US, it was like constant reactionary, constant like fight or flight and dehumanization and a few other things. And I know a lot of you aren't that way, but how do we change that, right? Instead of beating ourselves up or beating our family up or whatever, right? But this year did not begin from a place of stillness. It did not begin from a place of routine. And the Omen Days for me personally, as somebody who's been doing predictive work, spirit work, walking this road, walking my talk for over 5 decades, especially with the animal world, with nature, and the spirit world. The Omen Days actually unfolded during my honeymoon, during an international travel where my neighbor was bombed, okay, where deep relational and sensory immersion happened. And I didn't fight. I didn't even pull out my tarot card deck. It was crazy. Usually these are things I normally do, but I sat and I listened. I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of weaving. I did a lot of writing and journaling and communing. And the honeymoon is Like that is part of this liminal threshold. Okay? So this episode is really about what showed up, not what you planned. Not what we planned, right? The Omen Days as witnessing practices, not superstition, not control, but allowing the world to speak to us and listening to us as a direction, as a roadmap. The 12 Omen Days really reflect each month of the coming year, as I mentioned before. And how I read it through was how my body reacted, the emotional tone surrounding it, the interruptions, the surprises, the repetitions, the patterns, the land, the culture, the timing, the numerology. Not everything mattered, but what insisted and what showed up did. So January is like the architecture. It is like, we forget, we see in the Gregorian calendar that January is the beginning, but January is actually the end. January is the end of the cycle. February kind of begins the cycle. I know in astrology, March kind of begins the cycle. Okay? So at the end of the day, regardless if it's February or March, January is not the beginning. We've just somehow made January the beginning. All right? So that spider web that showed up appearing after solstice was hugely important. And these are core teachings that the web was asking us. So for you, if you're looking for what do you need for right here, right now, for the month of January, you want to sit and reflect on these questions that I kind of sat and wrote for myself. What are you creating? What are you weaving? How are you weaving it? And you might even want to pause the record button so you can sit and reflect on these questions. And you might even want to have a notebook journal or journal nearby as you do this process, because that's going to be really important for you. You also want to think about what is anchored. Like, how is this web anchored and where is it anchored? For the spider in my office, it anchored itself on a candle that wasn't permanent and over a potential flame. That's transmutation. And it was willing to sacrifice the old part to birth something new. Who has access to what you are creating and weaving? The web is the intentional, precise, patient. It is very intentional. It is not about speed. It is about the structure. This is like the foundation. What do you want to build moving forward? Not what the tower is destroying. It is about, at the core of everything, what the fuck really matters? What really matters? The entire year is going to respond on how you weave this month. So it's really also addressing your nervous system orientation. Some of you may know I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder because of repeated decades long of abuse. And I've overcome so much that I'm off the meds. But it doesn't make me immune. I'm very well in touch with myself. And I know just changing geography and getting off a plane here took me 3 days to reorient myself, because things are so heavy, so dense, so intense, so unsafe right now. So what I'm asking you to do is to take a pause, pull back, weave, find communities. I know a lot of us are saying we want community, but what are you weaving? And are you finding communities to weave into? We are trying to build a community in Healing with Spirit. We're trying to foster, like, we're going to do game night and other things to really bring in people, to foster deeper relationships. So we know that we're all safe for each other and we're going to support each other. It's something we have to relearn. So January is also, the theme is really about something new is being woven. This is what I wrote in my notebook. Something new is being woven slowly, intentionally, with ancestral oversight. The web is not yet complete, but the pattern is already alive. The pattern is already alive. Okay? So that is what, I'm trying to get back to my notebook, that is what January brings in. Now, as the Omen Days kind of progressed, it was interesting to see what showed up between the prey, the predators, all these things, and how it showed up moving forward. In February is going to be about relationships. And what are you calling into relationships? For me, it was being newly married and navigating a shared rhythm and learning how to flow and grow with that. It also highlighted, the numerology that showed up was 22 and 222 repeatedly. That's the duality. It's also about partnership. It's about relation. It's everything that is relational. It is practicality. It's balance, duality. It also represents, the 4 card is the priestess card. So that's boundaries and stability. So that's again, it's highlighting how are you building the foundation. The 222 and 6 for February is about devotion. It's the Lover's card in tarot, so it's conscious, choice-driven relationships. Stop fighting against people who want to see harm to you. Stop trying to justify your right to exist. Find people who are going to support your right to exist. And unite forces there. The travel in itself, since we were airborne, that in itself really kind of was the omen of movement between worlds, a rite of passage. February is asking us to, what support needs to be named? Where can you no longer be alone? Isolating and going into our cocoon is not the answer anymore. We have to get out of there and we have to show up in spaces. So the February theme that I wrote in my notebook, this is my notebook here, for those who are watching this. The February theme and what I wrote was sacred partnership, conscious choice, and relational grounding. Love that is both mystical and practical. I think with us in the spiritual world, we have gotten so woo-woo, we've gotten really detached from reality. We keep saying we want that as the reality, instead of understanding that both are reality. And how do we live in the in-between? How do we dance between both worlds? So this invocation is really about relational honesty. That is what February is calling in. It's not manifestation culture. It's relational honesty, taking inventory. And how are you showing up to relationships in your life? How are you fostering and nurturing the relationships you want to build upon? That's what we're being asked to do. March was quite interesting. So on day 3, the Omen Days, I had a friend of mine that actually said, it's protective over you. And that had to do with a hawk that landed and flew over me. And the ants that also swarmed near me. But they were so tiny, they were barely hard to see, but they were all working together for a common cause. We also saw the black vultures So March's theme really highlighted the community supported transformation, old layers being metabolized so something essential can remain. So this is where voice and truth might collide. Cultural contrasts and history are going to be witnessed, moments that could not be unseen. So March is asking you a few things. Will you speak what you know now? Will truth cost you comfort? Because that's the threshold we're at, right? The vultures were really kind of talking about death and rebirth. So March is going to be a really uncomfortable month. I really feel March is going to be a really uncomfortable month for many of us because it has to do with it's like the shedding of the skin. It's the death and rebirth. And anybody who's ever had labor and birthed a child, this is what we're talking about. It's death and rebirth. It's purification. It's alchemy. It's ancestral cleanup. And if we haven't learned and been in an active community, it's going to be teaching us how to show up, because being in community is not easy. It is not easy, but it is worth it. It's basically asking you, how well do you know your neighbor? How well do you know the person down the street? You know, I grew up in an era where we would ride our bikes and we knew everybody's house. And we knew who was safe and we knew who wasn't. That is what we have to call back in again. April really addresses, so that showed up on Christmas Day. And the symbolism and omens had to do with the egret that actually flew within 3 to 4 feet of me. And really at a threshold time of the sun awakening from the darkness. Remember, it's always bright, it's always darkest before dawn. So this is what was showing up as the dawn was emerging after that darkness. That egret really addresses that balance, that grace, that precision, the stillness, also the deep listening. It is still waiting for the opportunity to strike. It is really in tune with the waves, it's in tune with the rhythms. It is in that liminal hour. So this is the threshold again between worlds. So that's the other thing that kept happening. 2026 really felt like this is a threshold year. This is like, I think you may have heard me say last year was kind of like shit to get off the pot. This is like, okay, you've had your moment. You still want to stay on the pot. This is like, you really need to get your shit together. All of us. I'm not immune. We're in this together. So April's theme is really about deep listening before the movement, grace before force, fearlessness rooted in stillness. Think about that. So April is going to be really about anchoring in, because you're going to be triggered as fuck. And so if you're not spending also time in the first 3 months learning how to manage your triggers and turning them into a power, you might want to need to book a one-on-one appointment with me or somebody else who helps you address this, because you're going to need to address that so it is not running you into the wrong direction. The triggers are part of the GPS, but if you're running and being reactionary, you're not actually paying attention to what it is showing you to know how to navigate and move forward. April is really about regulation. It's redefining what home looks like while away. It's nervous system responding to warmth and rest. April is asking for safety before productivity. I don't know why this matters, and one of you might have to remind me later if you're listening or watching and post a comment later, but I just heard that some of us may have some challenges with the tax season coming up. I don't know if it's somehow we're not going to get our refunds. I don't know, but I keep hearing something around that. There's a lot happening so fast on so many levels. So since I just came in, I don't want to refine it. I just want to kind of keep it there and how it's supposed to be seated. Now, December 26th, which represents May, this is going to be travel, unpredictability, spontaneity, joy. May is refusing stagnation. May, this is Beltane season too. This is where, what are we seeding? How are we nurturing? This is movement as medicine, not escape. So this is the ignition switch. This is the freedom switch. And what I show up for omens that day was, oh yeah, I had a male black cat that walked in front of me. In between my legs, and out of everybody that was around, it came to me friendly and unafraid. There was also a stalled car that was being pushed backwards by a group of people. The black cat really the message I got was the guardian of thresholds, protection and mystery, the feminine intuition that is reclaimed, even though it was a male cat. So this is showing the non-binary piece and the unity between the men that are really causing chaos and the women coming together. Okay? The threshold initiation, the May theme is really highlighting reclaiming intuition without fear, moving forward with support. By May, again, if you're doing this and everything is showing up for you, again, the patterns and how quickly one moves through these patterns just depends on where you are in your journey. So be patient and be kind with yourself. As long as you're still showing up, that's important. But this is also a month of moving forward with support and recognizing that you don't have to do it alone. There's no warning. It's not an affirmation of embodied intuition, especially in spaces others fear. It's a month of deliberate reversal and reclamation, trusting intuition in the dark. So this is about making peace, not letting the darkness rule. The darkness is just here to highlight. Remember, the stars shine the brightest in the darkest of night. For those who are Christian, the North Star is what guided the three wise men to Jesus, right? And it was the darkest of night. It wasn't when the sun was shining bright. So it's reversal, reclamation, trusting intuition in the dark and night, moving backward just enough to move forward differently. So this is almost like our own personal spiritual growth of retrograde, where we're not really moving backwards. We're just kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, how do we move forward differently? This is what may ask you. And again, you might want to write these questions down. Press the pause and write them down. What may be retrieved before forward motion is possible? Where is intuition asking for leadership over logic? What support is available once pride is released? So to kind of recap the first 5 months of the year, the first 4 months is about weaving, partnership, community, listening. Month 5 is about pause and reversal, shadow, trust. It's trusting that the shadows aren't our enemy. Shadows is actually, it's the roadmap to the gold, right? And month 6, June, is the love, it's the resting, it's the community, communication and creation. So May is kind of like the hinge month. May is a big, and it's something I heard, some of you heard me say this throughout last year. Those who've been in my circles, those who I've done one-on-one work with, have heard me say that May of 2026 is going to be the pivotal change month. We may not know what's going to happen politically in this country, but something big is going to shift in the month of May. So it's like, in the Omen Days even amplified that as a hinge month. So June's going to be the theme of love, communication, creation, a season of nesting, choice, vibrant creation. This is where holding joy and grief simultaneously, witnessing suffering alongside celebration. So June is going to be asking you what care is sustainable, what is not yours to carry anymore. July is going to be about solitude and insight. There's going to be moments of quiet and stimulation. There's going to be inner listening and sharpening. July is going to be a calibration month, not a withdrawal. I know in June I had a big message dream, which I'm going to keep to myself, but it really highlighted key themes of 3 generations, lineage continuity, the hinge generation, those that are on this earth today. We are the hinge generation. We are healing the past and paving the pathway for the future generations. We are the future ancestor we have dreamed about. So this is the hinge month for sovereignty. For day 7, this is about what leaves an imprint, even as it passes. So this is about impermanence, witnessing, ethical choices, ancestral warmth, and beauty without capture. So this is about presence over proof. So in July, again, we also want to think about, what do we insist in documenting that is meant to just be lived? Where does over recording, over documenting dilute reverence? So this speaks to sacred work. Those of us that do sacred work, we need to stop, honestly, posting on social media ceremonies and reverence things and posting it or doing live shares, because we cannot be present with the spirit world in doing that. Those who've been in ceremony with me will hear me say that. I may take pictures before or after, but never during. Never during. Now, and it also addresses letting go of performance. Trust what cannot be saved. Okay? So this is a big calibration month. Big calibration month. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I missed as far as that. July is not an ending, it's a turn of the spiral. The key messages I got was, you're still in the journey, just walking it from the inside now. Day 7 taught us that beauty doesn't need to be captured to be real, that values are lived through choice, and that some teachers arrive briefly, just long enough to remind us how to be human. So be mindful of who shows up. And I believe, yes, that was the day that a woman named Carmen showed up in my life, and I left in tears. She had the grandmotherly feel that we all crave, that gentle warmth of love and attention. That I was the stranger and all she did was hug me. Some of you have seen me post a picture of her on social media and a little bit about her story. And when I left there, I left in tears, knowing that I'll probably never see her again. And yet the imprint remains. Being that future ancestor, that passage of what is happening. Notice how things are different, the ending that has moved. And August is about power and authority. There's going to be a big shift in August. It's witnessing how power operates across cultures. This, I feel, is going to be something big globally that's going to happen by the month of August. There's going to be a lot of discomfort and a lot of discernment that's going to happen. So be mindful that August is going to ask you, how will you hold authority without replicating harm? And I want to specifically ask my white friends that are very well intentioned, if you're listening this far, please understand that we are all perpetuating harm and not knowing it. It's in our blinders. It's not shaming ourselves for doing it, it's recognizing for what it is and how do we relearn so we don't replicate it moving forward. There was a lot of transitions in the month in the day 8. The overall theme was about expansion after containment, community reclaiming space, life asserting itself. So there's going to be something big that I feel is happening in the month of August. I'm not clear what, but I feel like some sort of global action. Take it for what it's worth. I'm not hinting at WW3. I am hinting that something globally will happen in August. Now, for September, there felt to be a lot of, again, that's another transition month. This is about harvesting. What are we harvesting? How are we moving forward? And what needs to let go? The omens that showed up included butterflies and falcons, and a sloth. So intentional themes and closing reflections included repeating animal medicine, repeating medicine around boundaries and protection, thresholds, and needing to take a pause, sovereignty without domination, community without hierarchy, slowness as wisdom, the honeymoon as initiation, not as an escape. So the omens aren't loud, they're consistent. That's the key. They're not going, hey, here's the billboard. Everything that happened through the months showed a pattern. And they're not loud, but there's a pattern, there's a consistency, and they're still unfolding as we go. The consistent thread that was showing up is sovereignty without domination. The repeated themes around thresholds and liminal spaces. This is going to be the energies we're going to be experiencing in 2026. This is a big year in numerology as a 1 year, which is an ignition year. This is like the Fool and Tarot card. You have a choice of what path you want to choose. The pattern is I am not being shown destinations. I am being shown how to cross. This also suggests a longer arc into 2026 that is less about outcomes and more about how do we master the threshold? How do we master the now and not the destination? The knowing, when to enter, when to wait, when to descend, when to stay at the edge rather than the center. This applies through all thresholds, whether personally in our lives, in our culture, in our professional worlds. This is what this is about. The animals appear at moments of decision or transition. So pay attention to when the natural world is showing up, when you are trying to make a decision or you're trying to get answers. These are not, by the way, signs of reassurance. These are instructional omens. So the signs are showing up differently in 2026. We're also being shown how to change what is coming without violence. This is one of the clearest through lines that happened and showed up for the month of September of 2026. There was a very territorial egret that showed up, that when another egret showed up, it showed a clear boundary, it chased it away, there was no chaos. It didn't care, by the way, if there was magpies, humans, pipers, plovers, whatever it was only the same species. The white egret, hint, whiteness, okay? Chasing the whiteness without violence. The caracara, which is a type of falcon, it kind of looks very similar to maybe an osprey or a very small bald eagle. This showed messages around strategy over force. And I really sat with these things because That if we force sometimes shows up because of panic, of fight or flight, right? We want to fight. That's a reaction versus stop, pause, breathe. What's the action step? It's strategy. This is where community building, grassroots building, waiting periods before entry. So waiting. This is the discernment piece. Knowing when, again, when to enter, when not to enter. The small animals that showed closeness to proximity, and threatened species trusting that closeness. So this shows that the people that are being threatened right now, and how do we unite? This is really a key moment in September about unity. But we have to grow up as us as white folks have to understand that we have to grieve over all the harm we've been conditioned to believe. No omen in the month of September supports aggression, dominance, or proving. The pattern message was really about boundaries are ecological, not reactive. That was huge. That was huge for the month of September. October was really a pattern of justice and balance. So this was really big. So day 10, or the month of October, really carries this, holy crap, look at where we're at, right? Also in the pagan wheel, this is the last harvest before we go into the months of darkness. We're going from mother energy into Kaliak energy and Samhain energy, right? And Morrigan energy. Morrigan is very much about sovereignty. So this month carried, now when I look at the Omen Days, culmination and transmission energy. What has been revealed now wants to be witnessed, named, and metabolized, not rushed into meaning making. So this is about justice and balance, beauty and brutality coexisting. October as a mirror month of where imbalance can no longer be ignored. So the theme for October is about reckoning, witnessing, and the return of the scavenger wisdom. This really happened, ironically, and I didn't even realize this at the time. When we went to the History Museum in Columbia, and I didn't realize that there was going to be an exhibition on how the Inquisition and the persecution of witches really dominated a lot of the History Museum. And if I have my dates, if I read them correctly, that the Inquisition started in the year 1215 in Colombia. And when I went into the yard where people were hung or where they had the guillotine, there was a heaviness, and above the gallows was a black vulture, and that was to me like, between that and the woman I spoke to that was next to me, that was the human interaction. That she was an American, I didn't realize at the time. I just said, hey, look at that. That's a big sign that, geez, the vulture is so close to us and he's hanging around the gallows. And that, to me, that's a sign, right? And I didn't know if she spoke Spanish or English, and happened to be that she was American, but she was also an immigrant whose husband is an American working in Colombia. So there's all these layers, right? So the message I heard was like to wait and then transform what cannot remain. The symbolic translation I got was, you do not rush to rescue. You allow systems to reveal themselves. Then you teach how to metabolize what remains, the trauma, the history, the inheritance of what has happened. The message is about addressing the spiritual gaslighting, the sanitized histories, the healing spaces that erase harm while claiming love and light. Like, this is really huge, right? And so it's, how do we address exploitation as protection, frame dominance as order, prey on the small, intuitive embodied beings, and yet the icing on the cake that happened in that same yard was watching two caracaras, which are again the hawks, chasing a red squirrel, and how the red squirrel outpaced them all in that yard. So that squirrel survived by movement, not force. And that is the medicine that we need to remember. It is all about that movement piece, that community piece. And how do we do that? And the overall message I got was, again, you are a witness for what history tried to hide. You do not resurrect the dead. You teach the living how to carry the truth without becoming it. Rest now. The scavengers have done their work. What remains will feed the future. And because October, again, I wasn't paying attention to this part at the time, but when I was journaling and reflecting about the Omen Days, October also is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And there's a lot of things that are happening that are laws, like coercive control, litigation abuse, and post-separation abuse, that we are in Darvo, which we are witnessing at large scale presently. And so this is what has been hidden violence to a public reckoning, because the public is going to start recognizing, like, oh my God, this has gotten out of control. And then I'm going to say, this is why we need to believe survivors. Survivors have been on the forefront from the beginning. And if we would have just believed survivors, maybe we wouldn't have had what we have got going on, but we can't go there. This is all a reckoning that has to happen. And so the symbolism is really important. And we also have pending legislations in multiple states. So the bill is not just that are happening state to state, the pending legislations for abuse victims. This is about ancestral repair work in legal form. That is also, so October is going to be a big, big month. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of pop, 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 pop all over the place. So it's going to be like the weave. All of a sudden, like we're weaving this web in January, and all of a sudden it's going to be like, maybe in June we're not seeing where the web is taking shape, right? But by October, we're like, oh, look at what's showing up now. And it's going to go boom, 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 because of everything we have put into place throughout the year. October is going to ask us, what truth are you finally ready to let be seen? It is a final thread of integration, from inquisition to public persecution, from domestic violence to private persecution, from colonization to systemic control, from children to nervous system truth tellers, to the vultures, the truth that metabolizes what denial leaves behind, to us as the witness, the translator, and the boundary holder. This Omen Day confirms our advocacy was never on a side. It has always been central. And for those who do advocacy work and sacred activist work, it's also going to be a time when the dust settles to rest, that integration needs to work in there. Now for November is really about sensitivity and intuition. There's going to be a little heightened awareness, again, because we're still in Samhain energy. We're moving into Kaliak energy. The Kaliak, which is the great-grandmother. She is the storm. She is the ancestral piece. So there's going to be maybe some readjustments in our nervous system, receiving unspoken information. November is going to be cautioning against numbing us and trying to go back to the old ways or bypassing old ways. And December is going to be about integration and legacy. Now, there were some things that happened on day 12 of the Omen Days, and it really is going to be highlighting also some grief that some of us might be experiencing. On the morning of January 2nd, we did find a dead mourning dove. It appeared 2 days after the fireworks and celebration, so there's a grief or maybe a rupture that might happen that we need to integrate. So December energy is that reckoning after maybe some celebratory things. It's also ethical integration. It is what is carried forward and not what ends. Not everything is going to survive what we want to call joy. So we have to really, for some of us, it might be some very painful transitions for the 2026 year. And so we have to be okay with what shows up there for us. And we have to be, really okay with the stuff that didn't materialize that we were hoping. The mourning dove also brings the grief and the love. So, since January and February is really the foundation right now that we're creating, January weaves the web, February names what needs to be invited into. We cannot invoke into the web that we haven't woven consciously. So we need to really think about what are we weaving consciously. The structure without invocation becomes rigid. The invocation without structure collapses. So these are some things that these are some takeaways that I want you to think about. What are you building? What are you building? Who belongs in it? What support must be named? What no longer gets access? And the collective thread of what we are weaving at the same time and what is emerging for 2026, you want to think discernment over urgency, embodiment over ideology, relationship over isolation. So community, right? Relational community over isolation. Isolation was very much a theme for 2025. That energy no longer works. If we're moving into sovereignty and liberation energy, it takes a community. Okay? Precision matters and strategy more than proclamation. And so this is my invitation. Revisit your own things that may have happened between Christmas or, and New Year's or around that same time without rewriting it. Just sitting with it. Track one repeating theme that you notice that happened between the holidays and today. Let the body kind of be your discernment piece, your antenna before the story. And February is asking us, what am I willing to invoke instead of just endure? What are you invoking? This is taking that, it's like this is setting the anchors of the web that's being weaved, right? The web is still being built. It will take 12 months to build it. The year is going to respond to how we care for each other, for ourselves, for those that are around us, for our home, for our inner temples. It's not about control. That piece has to be surrendered. If you don't know what coercive control is, that might be a time to really understand what it is and surrender that piece. The Omen Days don't predict, they are just revealed. So everything I've shared with you today is about what was revealed. So this is a gentle invitation into January awareness and the February invoke as we move into horse energy. Horse energy, again, the fire horse, is all about, I kept hearing liberation being the foundation, but to get there, it takes action and sovereignty. We were going to close now with some breath, some stillness, or some spoken invocation. I also found, I also pulled, this is ironic, the candle stopped and blew on this, but I pulled this card for today, and it is the Hermit, oh no, the Hierophant, sorry, the Hierophant. So this is about, if you look at the card, for those who see, it's about really tapping up and allowing the ancestral ways. It's about the remembering, the teachers from the wisdom keepers, the wise ones. And sorry to say, the white folks don't really have it. We've lost that. We have to remember what that looks like. Be very cautious of looking at and working with folks with very overly produced social media. Because most of the wisdom keepers and elders I know today are not flashy all over social media. They're just not. None of mine are. So this is what I want you to take with you. Now what I would just like as we close out is just to take a deep breath. In for 4, hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you feel, repeat that again. Notice what's showing tightness in the body. Notice where you're finding resistance, knowing where maybe even there's some spaciousness. Allow that spaciousness to continue. Maybe just put your hand on your heart and one on the belly and just say to the body, and this has to be, again, we call this Kodadama because this is the magic of the words and the frequency of just saying, thank you, body, for holding something I have been challenged to hold myself. Thank you, body, for helping me to move what needs to move. And if you would like to join us, if you are local or near local, for the Imbolc on February 1st, where we're going to be solidifying and working on connection for the year, consecrating that connection and that sense of community, and seeding for 2026. It's a 4-hour, it's a half day. You're more than welcome to join us. I think we have 9 spots left for that event. And we will be again doing the embodied and liberated 9-month program starting in the fall. Be sure to be on the email list. And I will also be speaking at the Living Expo in April in Quincy, Massachusetts, on the medicine of the wise woman and what that looks like for the modern day. You're welcome to join us there. Be sure to subscribe, or if you would like to book a one-on-one session, please check the links below. Reach out. We're here to support. And above all, share. If you liked this podcast, share, comment, and let us know what resonated with you the most. That would be great. Until next time, have a great day. From us to you, and from Triggers and Spiritual Medicine, I'll see you next month.